$47 million. That's how much cryptocurrency I personally cashed out through my network over the past year. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. The entire empire of fictitious charitable foundations has passed through more than $250 million, 40 NPOs, hundreds of frontmen, and it all came crashing down because of one line in an Excel file. In my industry, the menu is known as the accountant. It all started with a question that a client called Nordic asked me, a question that an honest accountant could only have one answer to. I gave another. But let's take it one step at a time. March 2018. I am 40 years old with 15 years of impeccable work in one of the largest audit companies. I specialized in the nonprofit sector, foundations, NGOs, charitable organizations. I knew this kitchen from the inside out. How grants are drawn up, how audits are conducted, what loopholes exist in reporting. I knew it, but I never used it. Until that moment. The cutback came out of the blue. Cost optimization due to the introduction of automated accounting systems. Pretty words for the simple truth. We were thrown out on the street, an entire department. Compensation, 3 salaries. With a mortgage on a flat in a dormitory neighborhood and a student daughter, it meant one thing: disaster. I spent the next 2 months trying fruitlessly to find a job. CVs went nowhere. At interviews, they smiled politely and promised to call me back. At the age of 40, with a narrow specialization in NPOs, no one wanted me. May 2018. I remember that morning down to the last detail. I'm sitting in the kitchen, browsing another employment forum. My coffee is cold, the fridge is empty, and I have 2 months left on my account. And then a private message pops up. Need advice on NPO reporting. Payment in BTC, Bitcoin. Back then, I only knew about cryptocurrency from the news. Something about mining, volatility, the dark internet. But the sender, who called himself Merchant, offered 0.05 BTC for a simple consultation. A quick search showed it was about $400 for an hour's work. The first consultation was innocuous. A merchant wanted to understand how to properly process a charitable donation in cryptocurrency. Is it legal? What paperwork is required? How to reflect in the reporting? I answered all the questions based on the current legislation. Nothing criminal. The money came an hour after we talked. For the first time in my life, I held cryptocurrency. It turned out to be easier to cash out than I thought, through an exchanger, then to my card, minus the commission but still favorable. The next message from the merchant came a week later. This time the questions were more complex. How to structure a large donation to avoid unnecessary questions. Which jurisdictions are more loyal to crypto donations? I felt I was teetering on the edge, but technically still advising within the law. 0.1 BTC for the second consultation, almost $1,000. By July, I was already advising 5 clients. All of them came on Trader's recommendation. Fixer, Index, Nordic, and Redhead. Names meant nothing. I couldn't see their faces, and they communicated only via secure messengers. The questions became more and more specific. And then Nordic asked the question that changed everything. What if the NPO only exists on paper? Nordic's question hung in the air of the encrypted chat. I stared at the screen and realized this was the moment. The Rubicon. I could answer that it was a scam, close my laptop, and continue looking for a legitimate job. Or you could answer the way I did. Technically, it's possible, I typed. Many NPOs exist formally. The main thing is proper reporting. The Nordic is typing. My heart is pounding like crazy. I need an organization to accept cryptocurrency donations, large amounts. Can you organize it? Half a Bitcoin advance, $5,000 just to get started. Another half after launch. I said yes. August 2018. NPO registration turned out to be easier than I thought. Foundation for Children with Rare Diseases. A beautiful name, a noble goal. All the documents are in order. Charter, protocols, bank account. Everything is perfect on paper. Nordic sent the addresses of crypto wallets. During the week, they received the equivalent of $200,000 in different currencies: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Monero. My task is to turn the numbers on the screen into real money in the NPO's bank account. The scheme was as simple as anything ingenious. Cryptocurrency is received as anonymous donations. The NPO enters into contracts with contractors to provide services, counseling, website development, booklet printing. The contractors invoice, the NPO pays. Everything is legal. Only the contractors existed as formally as the foundation itself. In the first month, we withdrew $50,000. Minus the costs of registration, taxes, my commission. Nordic got $42,000 net. He was happy. Need more power, he wrote in September. Find people, build a network. That's how Lawyer came to be. Nordic brought him in himself, a specialist in registering NPOs in various jurisdictions. A man without a name or a face, but with a talent for creating flawless documents. In 2 months, he registered 7 foundations in 3 countries. Then came the programmer, young guy, cryptocurrency genius, created wallets, mixed transactions, wiped his tracks, worked exclusively for crypto, not even interested in fiat money. By December 2018, we were withdrawing $300,000 a month. I stopped looking for a regular job. Why, if I was earning more in 1 day than in a month in an auditing company? But on New Year's Eve, Nordic wrote a phrase that made me chill. Accountant, we have a problem. It seems some of your people aren't just working for us. Nordic's message caused me to have a sleepless night. By then, we had 12 people working in our network. In addition to the main core, the lawyer, and the programmer, there were new faces. Nominal directors for NPOs, accountants for contractors, cash couriers. Each knew only his or her own area of work, but a leak could be anywhere. January 2019 started with an internal investigation. At my request, the programmer checked all transactions for the last 3 months. The result was unexpected: duplicate payments. Someone was using our NPOs to withdraw additional amounts, disguising them as regular transactions. It's someone in accounting, the programmer wrote. Look, same amounts but different recipients. Classic double debit scheme. There were 3 accountants. Quiet. Worked with us from the beginning. A recommendation from the lawyer. Student. A guy of about 25 came after a month. And mathematician. The latest edition, very meticulous, always asking questions about schemes. Nordic was adamant. Find a rat, you've got a week. I started by checking maths. Too many questions, too much interest in the big picture. But the transactions led the other way. Duplicate payments started before he even showed up. A student? A check showed that the guy was just running errands without going into details. Besides, the sums of his remuneration were decent. He would hardly risk everything for an extra 10 or 15,000. That left Quiet, the person I trusted the most. He had helped launch the first NPOs, set up the paperwork. I didn't want to believe it, but the facts were inexorable. Only he had access to the necessary accounts. On the 15th of January, I opened a secure channel of communication with Jurist. Usually we exchanged only work-related messages, but the situation required a direct conversation. Quiet works for the competition, I wrote without preamble. Uses our NPOs for their operations. We need to get him out of the system. There was a long pause. The lawyer typed and erased the message several times. I'm on it. Disable all his access, change his credentials, but we have a bigger problem. Which one? You know why he pulled it off so easily? Because we got too big. 40 NPOs is no longer a network, it's a corporation, and corporations always have weak links. We need a complete reorganization. He was right. In a year, we went from a cottage industry operation to an international system. Turnover was up to 10 million a month. Nordic was bringing in more and more clients. Fixer wanted to launder the proceeds of his car business. Index was working with insider trading. Redhead was doing something in pharmaceuticals. We need a reorganization, continued lawyer. Split the network into independent cells, restrict access, implement new security protocols. February and March were spent rebuilding. Tihogo was disconnected from all operations. The official version for the team was security problems. The real reason was known only to me, the lawyer, and Nordic. The NPOs were divided into clusters of 5 or 6 organizations, each with its own accountant and director. No one saw the full picture except me. By April 2019, the new structure was running like clockwork. Turnover had recovered. The clients were happy. I was beginning to think that the crisis was over, but on the 3rd of May came a message from the programmer. Accountant, we have visitors. Someone's breaking into our systems. It's not the police. They're too rough. Looks like competition. An hour later, Nordic texted, Quiet's gone. He's disconnected all communications, wallets are empty. Looks like he's been bought out by his competitors or he's gone to them with our data. And he added, change all passwords, all the schematics he had access to are compromised, and be prepared. If they've poached Taihogo, it means they know about you. Expect an offer of cooperation or a blackmail attempt. Nordic's warning proved prophetic. A week after Tycho disappeared, an unfamiliar contact wrote to me. Hello, accountant. We know about your network. 40 NPOs, 247 million in turnover. That's impressive. Let's talk about cooperation. I didn't respond, but the messages kept coming. We are not competitors. We can offer more customers, better terms. Think about it. May 2019. Our reorganization is complete. The new structure was working steadily. I learned to live with a constant sense of anxiety. Checked tails, changed routes. Used only secure communication channels. Paranoid? Maybe. But quiet disappeared for a reason. In June, John Doe wrote again. Last sentence, a meeting, neutral territory, we'll discuss terms. Or we pass your information on to interested parties. Blackmail. I showed the correspondence to Nordic. Ignore it, was his advice. If they had real information, they'd have used it by now. Bluffing. But something happened in July that made us reconsider the situation. 3 of our NPOs in Eastern Europe received requests from the tax authorities. At the same time. A formal audit, nothing serious, but the fact itself was alarming. This is not a coincidence, lawyer wrote. Someone is leaking information. The checks came through cleanly. The documentation was perfect. But the message was clear. They could get us if they wanted us. August 2019 was a watershed year. Nordic brought in a new client. A big, very big client. The man wanted to withdraw $50 million in 2 months. The commission was 15%. $7.5 million in 2 months of work. Old school, Nordic explained. Been working since the 90s. It's your network he wants. You have the best NPO infrastructure in the region. 50 million. That's more than we spent in a quarter. The risks are huge, but so is the money. The first batch, 10 million, arrived in early September. Various cryptocurrencies, complex chains of transactions. A programmer worked around the clock, distributing the flows to NPOs. Accountants were doing the paperwork. Nominee directors signed contracts. In a fortnight, we've cleared the first 10 million. Minus expenses, minus taxes, the architect netted 8.5 million. He was happy. Moving on, Nordic relayed. But in October, the problems began. Banks started blocking transactions. Not all of them, selectively, but enough to slow down the process. Someone had clearly signaled the financial monitoring. I checked the whole team. There were no new people. Old people were working as usual. Where's the leak coming from? The answer came unexpectedly. The programmer discovered an anomaly in one of the crypto wallets. Someone had set up a hidden redirection of microtransactions. The amounts were minuscule, but enough to track the main flows. It's done externally, the programmer explained, but they needed internal access for the initial installation, 3 or 4 months ago. 3 or 4 months ago, when Quiet was still working with us. In November, I made a decision that changed everything. I wrote to this unknown contact. Ready to meet. Name a place and time. The answer came instantly. Smart choice. Details tomorrow. Nordic was against it. The lawyer was silent. The programmer shrugged. Not his problem. But I knew that to finish the deal and make the promised millions, I had to deal with the leak once and for all. The 15th of November, 2019. A date I will remember forever. It was the day I broke the cardinal rule of never meeting clients in person. Even though it wasn't technically a client, it was a man who wanted to destroy everything I had built. The 15th of November, 2019. The meeting was scheduled in a business center on the outskirts of the city, 3rd floor, the office of a consulting company. I arrived by taxi, leaving my car in another neighborhood. Old habits. There were 2 men waiting in the meeting room. A man of about 45, expensive suit, confident posture, and a young woman with a tablet, obviously an assistant. The scorekeeper, the man didn't bother to introduce himself. Thank you for coming in. I represent a group of investors interested in your infrastructure. Straight to the point. No mystery games. We know about your network. We know volumes, patterns, major customers. Quiet was talkative, so it wasn't a bluff. They did have information. What do you want? Partnership. You continue to work, but now 30% of the turnover goes to us. In return, protection, new clients, solving issues with banks. It's pure racketeering, only with expensive suits and business terminology. What if I say no? The woman opened the tablet, showed the screen. There were copies of our NPO documents, lists of transactions, even some correspondence. Then law enforcement will have it. All the countries where you work. I asked for time to think about it. They gave me a week. Upon returning, the first thing I did was write to Nordic. His reply was expected. No deals. Finish your work with the elder, get the money, and shut down some of your operations. We'll wait it out. That's easy to say. The senior was waiting for the remaining $30 million to be withdrawn. The banks kept blocking transactions, and now there's an ultimatum from the so-called investors. The next 2 weeks were hell. We worked in emergency mode, changing schemes on the fly, opening new accounts to replace blocked ones. The programmer rewrote the algorithms for distributing transactions. A lawyer urgently registered additional NPOs in countries with more lenient regulation. By early December, we had withdrawn another $20 million. 10 more to go. The older man was nervous. The deadline was looming. And then something happened that I could not have foreseen. On the 5th of December, lawyer wrote, "We have a problem, a big problem." It turned out that he used document templates to register new NPOs. To speed up the process, he copied the charters, changing only the names and details. But in one place, he forgot to change the registration number. As a result, 2 NPOs in different countries had the same number in their founding documents. "It's a small thing," I said. "We'll fix it." "No," lawyer replied. "One of these NPOs has already been audited. The documents are at the tax office. If we file corrections now, they'll start digging, and the other NPO is doing seniors' transactions right now. Duplicate number. Stupid mistake. But it created a trail that could link 2 organizations in different jurisdictions, and then pull up the whole chain. Freeze operations," I ordered. "I can't. Transactions are already in process. If we stop it, we'll lose money. The older man will bury us." I opened an Excel file with a complete structure of our operations. 40 NPOs, hundreds of relationships, thousands of transactions. And somewhere in there, in one cell, was that damn duplicate number. On the 10th of December, an unknown number called. I didn't pick up the phone, but I received a text message. A week has passed, waiting for a decision. On the same day, the programmer discovered a new problem. The bank through which the main transactions took place introduced additional verification of cryptocurrency transactions. All transfers over 50,000 were now subject to manual moderation. How many of us are stuck? About 3 million. Broken down into pieces, but still stuck. The older man demanded that the deal be finalized. Unknown. Investors waited for a response. Banks were blocking transactions, and somewhere in the system a bomb was ticking in the form of a duplicate number. On the 15th of December, I called an emergency meeting in a secure chat room. For the first time ever, I, Nordic, lawyer, and programmer were in the same channel. "Options?" I asked. "Let's wind down," lawyer suggested. "We close the problematic NPOs, withdraw what we can, and write off the rest as losses." "The older man won't let us go," Nordic objected. "He's got 10 million left in the system." "We can try alternative schemes," the programmer interjected, "through exchangers, P2P, even cash if necessary, but the commissions will eat up 20%. I looked at the screen and realized there was no way out. Every decision was a loss, financial or worse. And then I did something I should never have done. I opened a basic Excel file with the whole structure and sent it to Red. Yes, the same client who was in pharmaceuticals. During a year of work, she never once caused any problems, always paid on time, never asked any unnecessary questions. And most importantly, she had her own withdrawal channels. "I need help," I wrote. 10 million stuck in the system. I'm willing to give 30% if you help me get it out. The reply came an hour later. "Send me the structure of the deal. I'll see what I can do." I sent the file, all the schematics, all the connections, all the NPOs. It was a security breach, but I had no choice. On the 20th of December, Red wrote, "I can help you, but there is a condition. After this deal, you only work with me." Monopoly. It wanted to get the entire network under its control. And the other customers? They'll find other performers. That same day, another unknown number called. This time I answered. "Time's up," a male voice said. Information goes out to law enforcement tomorrow morning. Wait, I thought frantically, I need 2 more days. I'll close out the current operations and we'll make a deal. 24 hours, no more. The 21st of December, 2:30 p.m. I was sitting in front of my laptop looking at an open Excel file. In the next tab was a correspondence with Red. She was waiting for confirmation of the deal, and then I noticed, in the NPO table, row 27, column F, the registration number of one of the organizations, and the exact same number in row 41. It's the same double that lawyer was talking about. But it wasn't about the number. It was about the date these records were created. According to the file's metadata, both lines were added on the same day, the 5th of September 2019, 2 weeks before lawyer allegedly accidentally used the same number twice. It wasn't a mistake, it was a bookmark. I've opened the file's modification history. On the 5th of September, only 3 people had access to it, me, lawyer, and Redhead, who I was sending her transaction report to at the time. The puzzle is complete. Red and lawyer worked together. They created a vulnerability in the system so they could use it at the right moment to take over the entire network. The unknown investors are their people too. It was all planned in advance. I closed the laptop and dialed Nordic. We've been divorced, I said. Redhead and lawyer are working together. They want to take over the network. Evidence? In the Excel file, the dates don't match. Long pause. How much time do you have? 10 hours? Then they leak it to the police. That's enough. Listen carefully. Nordic's plan was simple and elegant. Surrender instead of fighting, but on our terms. On the 22nd of December at 8 a.m., I wrote to Red, I agree to your terms, but first withdraw Senior's money. As soon as he confirms receipt, the net is yours. At the same time, the programmer, under Nordic's instructions, was doing what he did best, erasing traces, deleting critical data, wiping servers, destroying backups, leaving only an empty shell. By late afternoon, Red confirmed that Senior's money had been withdrawn, all 10 million minus her commission. Great, I wrote, sending full access, and sent it. Access to 40 NPOs, empty NPOs, because in 24 hours the programmer transferred all assets to reserve accounts that only Nordic and I knew about, and then deleted all traces of those transactions. On the 23rd of December, Red realized she had been duped, but it was too late. The older man got his money and disappeared. Nordic closed all communication channels. The programmer left for an unknown destination, and I left them an Excel file, the one with the duplicate number on line 27 and line 41. Let them explain to the police how that happened. Of the 247 million that went through the system in 4 years, I managed to keep about 8 in reserve accounts. Not much, but enough to start a new life. It's December 2022. It's been 3 years since those events. I'm no longer involved in NPOs. I don't know about others. I don't want to know. I think I left at the right time when I was supposed to. And that line in the Excel file, it taught me one thing. There are no mistakes in this business. There are only other people's plans that you didn't have time to uncover. Story's over. Call me paranoid. But I now keep all important data in my head only. Because trust is a luxury the man who laundered $250 million through bogus orphanages can't afford. The accountant's story has caused quite a stir on the Darknet Stories forum. Over 500 comments in the first week. Financiers argued about the realism of the schemes. Lawyers pointed out the gaps in the legislation that make such things possible. Many people didn't believe the story was real. Too smooth. It doesn't work that way. The fantasies of a failed accountant. But there were also those who recognized the details, especially from Eastern European countries where NPOs do undergo minimal checks. The accountant himself appeared only once in the comments, answering a question about the current state of cryptocurrency regulation. I don't know. I'm not in the subject anymore. That's all. If this video is interesting to you, please subscribe to the channel and give it a like. This helps YouTube's algorithms and gives me the opportunity to find and tell new stories from the dark side of the internet. As always, Mr. Dark Web.